Glyos. It's a universal peg and socket system letting independent toy producers create fun and inventive figures with totally interchangeable parts. This week, I'm going to tell you about some of my favorite producers of these toys. While I talk about Matt Dowdy a lot for these videos, Onell Design really is a family effort, with everyone pitching in and coming up with new ideas. In a way, I could say the same for all Glyos companies. Many producers help each other out, and Matt in turn helps a lot of them. Not that he'd ever take credit for it. I respect the guy for that. So if you missed yesterday's review, we looked at a lot of the alien-based offerings from Onell Design, and there were a lot of them. Seriously, I just used a lot twice. That means many. Today we're jumping to the inorganic, starting with a curious creation called the Buildman. He's a standard 3 inches, 12 points of swivel articulation, 19 components, but what's curious is a lot of those parts are asymmetrical. Hands, arms, lower legs, feet, even the 2 round parts on his back are different moldings. It kind of gives him an improvised feeling, like he was made of leftover parts, which the backpack of extra bits lends itself to. Kind of reminds me of the villains from the Crash Dummies toys. The parts are also ambidextrous. Parts can swap and still look fine, so if you had 2, you could build a symmetrical one and both would be totally different molds from each other, and using one of the parts on the back as a spare head pushes that even more. Like the Glyos, Buildmen are sometimes sold pre-built with an upgrade set, in this case axis joints, creating an axis Buildman, specifically here, Origin Mark 13. Every Glyos toy needs to be made in this bright gold color. Add in the black and red and you have one of the best color schemes you could ask for. For something more retro, here's a Phaseon. Designed with pipe arms and a dome head, he looks like something Flash Gordon would be fighting, an aesthetic I really like. The arms and legs are solid components, so despite 9 meaningful points of articulation, he feels a bit stiff, but that also feels right for the design. It's parts that made me a fan of this one. The 14 components come in handy for machine builds that need pipes and rounded components. There's some contained building to do as well. Notice his other hand is built into the arm cannon, and the bulk of it can work for swapping some body parts around. But for something more substantial, just like Glyons, sometimes they're released with hub sets built in, creating an advanced Phaseon. Yeah, this is one of the guys that built my Johnny 5, and pushes the sci-fi robot motif even harder. The black version I get a few IG-88 vibes from, but more often than not, I'm using a pink Thanos head to create a modern Nazgar for my RoboForce figures to fight. Long as we're on old school piped arm robots, meet Buildman. Talk about tone shift. This one looks like he was built from a clock tower bell. It's different, there's a charm to the guy, and I think it's the big innocent eyes doing it. He reminds me of a bot I'd see in a black and white anime, but I can't recall which he'd be from. With 13 parts and the same 9 points of articulation, he's a natural companion for the Phaseon, providing several of the same body parts but in larger and thicker varieties. Buildman has a secret, however. There's another configuration for the toy, using a second, secret head hidden inside the body. He's a nice guy though, so unless you make him mad, you'll rarely see this.
Oh god, he's mad! Why did you make him mad? Why?
Yeah, so don't do that. Well, let's move on, shall we? Now I promised some more vinyl talk, so let's do that with the Syclodoc. Though this one's looking rather familiar. I don't know, it doesn't seem logical. Ah well. This version is called Cyclowave, so yeah, it's totally intentional. It's an alternate release of the Armadoc, of which I don't own any, so there we go. I do love the design of this thing. Onell has a serious thing for arm cannons, and as a Mega Man fan, I can't really blame him. Cyclowave here is done lovingly in two-tone purple. I'll say here, Onell is great at paint matching. Usually when I see parts painted to match molded plastic, the hue is off, because whatever you have in the sprayer never looks the same once it's on a different colored plastic. But every Onell release I've seen has nailed it dead on. It's quite impressive. Part-wise, you've got 11 components here, with 10 points of articulation total. I'll be honest, not even sure this thing is a robot or just a giant alien. I do know without a head, its torso is big enough to accommodate a standard figure, which can then hide inside or use the body as a walker mech. The thing about Glyos vinyl? While they're too large to combine with standard figures without extra components, the larger toys use the same vinyl ports and plugs, so larger toys can intercombine. If you want a good example of that, I have just the subject. This is the rig, specifically in heavy armored configuration. I can honestly say this is one of the most elegant and perfect toys I have ever encountered. It's only 4 parts, 3 articulation points, but the design is flawless. No matter how I have the toy laying down, no matter how I have the parts rotated, it looks like something. It's something of a vinyl Rorschach test, I admit, but it looks good in any configuration. Now, I'm sure it doesn't look impressive to some, so let's beef it up. Like smaller toys, Onell provides upgrades. This is a conversion set. 1 little arm, 1 giant double cannon arm. You can make a standard rig build with this, but I prefer to go symmetrical on this one. Check it out. You have 20 seconds to comply. I think you'd better do as he says, Mr. Kinney. We can go farther though, and for that, we will need the block. Don't laugh. What you see here is 2 vinyl cubes connected by a large-sized socket, and the point is to be a basic piece you can start building from. How? By hacking it open. I know, it's scary to carve into something that may quickly become irreplaceable should you go wrong, but with some added heat to the vinyl or knife, it cuts smooth, and the molding really helps get the cut right. Right off the bat, cutting just 1 lets me create the mini blocker rig, a heavy defense build. To go farther, you'll need some more parts, like tri-hub wedges for adding angles, and switch pins to connect smaller vinyl ports together. That's for the more daring and experienced, but used well, and it creates some magnificent results. So after all that, 2 videos worth of Onell offerings, and there's still so much you didn't see. I didn't come close to showing you all the colors these have come in. There's special builds and even a few figure molds I didn't get to cover. Dude even has his own trading cards. Seriously, there's a lot. And it's great to see such a deep well of imagination. There's a reason Onell has been going so strong for so long, and for veterans and newbies alike, there's no way to go wrong here. Yes, I'm giving you extra credit on your last day. You're about to flunk out, mister. You need this. The more people getting into Glyos, the more ambitious the projects are getting. Similar to Toyfinity, others have decided to use the system to revive obscure toy lines. I mentioned Power Lords were revived through Glyos by 4 Horsemen, the guys who sculpt Masters of the Universe classics. 4-H also used Glyos to resurrect the Outer Space Men and their seriously retro stylings. There was also a Kickstarter campaign to release new Skeleton Warriors using Glyos engineering, so who knows what else might make a comeback. And keep in mind, we've only looked at a chunk of the Glyos universe this week. I didn't even get to talk about Rise of the Beasts, another Battle Beast inspired line, or the Soldier inspired Banamon series. Currently, about a dozen companies are using Glyos. In the future, more will emerge, like the Biomasters that Pat Busey is developing. The landscape is ever changing, kinda like the toys. If I learned anything about the people I've talked to preparing for this week of reviews, it's that they tend to be really cool people with incredible passion and diverse ideas. So keep an eye out. There's a brand of these for everyone, and if somehow there isn't, there probably will be eventually.